All right, welcome back, friends. It is Wednesday afternoon, and it's time for your Atlantic tropical update. What's going on in the entire basin? Well, we've got PTC2 out in the Caribbean, and we have Invest 95L, and that's in the northwestern portions of the Gulf of Mexico. Today is June 29th, 2022. So the latest in the tropics, PTC2's development is stagnant. It's racing across the southern Caribbean, that speed impeding its development. Invest 95L could develop in the northwest Gulf of Mexico. Chances of that are moderate now. It's got a small window to do so, though, before it moves up over inland over Texas by tomorrow morning. And we have another wave building behind PTC2. Those chances for development have been slightly increased or boosted as well. All right, we'll start things off with PTC number 2, potential tropical cyclone. It's still a potential. It's that void. It's filling that void between a tropical wave or invest and a named system or tropical depression. It's filling that empty space. What this means is it just hasn't satisfied the criteria or the definition of a tropical storm, despite having wind speeds up and over tropical storm force, and a lot of those are in the outlying convection or thunderstorms that are producing winds that strong. Right now, development chance of getting that upgrade, 80% within 48 hours, 90% within the next 5 days. Now, it is racing across the southern Caribbean at 24 miles per hour. This is a slight slowdown at the 1 o'clock advisory, down from 30 miles per hour earlier. That forward speed is putting a real damper on it developing. It's racing too far across the southern Caribbean at such a speed that it can't take advantage of the warm sea surface temperatures and consolidate that center to get that well-defined center of circulation to get that upgrade. So that's been what's impeding it. But however, it is forecast in the long-range models, or the next couple days at least, to slow down, and that's when they do expect it to organize and strengthen a little bit. Pressure at 1010 has gained latitude as well. The overall story with this system, even since it was a tropical wave, was how low latitude it was. It was a low lier, and now it's gained about 4 or 5 degrees in terms of latitude, gaining that latitude as it heads into the southern Caribbean Sea. Again, those chances 80% and 90%. There are warnings out there, tropical storm warnings in the southern Caribbean, areas that are not used to tropical activity. You say, well, how? They're in the Caribbean. Well, the ABC Islands, Aruba, Curacao, northern Colombia, and Venezuela, a lot of times storms travel and miss those areas because they're too far to the north. Remember, it's a low latitude, it's a low runner. We don't see those too often here. So tropical storm warnings are up for these areas. A warning is an upgrade from a watch, meaning that tropical storm conditions are expected or imminent. In fact, they are occurring at this time in Aruba and Curacao, with those winds getting up to possibly tropical storm force. All right, so what's going on? What's stopping PTC2 from becoming what would be Bonnie? That's the next name on our list. Well, we have satisfied the criteria. We've checked the box for tropical storm force winds, sustained winds of at least 39 miles per hour. They've been clocked at 40 miles per hour. In fact, recent Hurricane Hunter recon finds winds even stronger than that. But as I mentioned earlier, most of this is in that convection that's to the north of that center of circulation, that the nascent low, really. It's not actually defined in that area. That's where they think it could be developing, just to the south of all that convection. By the way, we're looking at the infrared imagery, so that tells us the cloud top temperatures, right? So when you see the whites and blacks in there, that is higher cloud tops, colder cloud tops, more intense convection. And we're looking for that low to maybe reposition itself a little farther to the north under some of that stronger convection. And that's not the only game in town in the Atlantic Basin overall. As I mentioned, we've got the Gulf of Mexico system, Invest 95L, and then another wave. This is a tropical wave coming out of the main development region that's been boosted a bit. 10% in 2 days, 30% within the next 5 or so. So here's another look at how a little bit more developed PTC2 looks today than it did yesterday. Looking at this at face value, it certainly looks at least like a tropical depression, if not a tropical storm, but we just have not checked that box for that defined center of circulation, and its forward speed being so quick is what's impeding that development. So we just came off the 1 o'clock intermediate advisory. Next up will be the 4 p.m. That'll be any changes to the forecast track going forward, and if there is any upgrade, if it gets a name or becomes a tropical depression, we'll find out at 4 p.m. That's in Central Time. It'll be 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, visible satellite imagery here shows a better looking system. Certainly, as we've been watching this over the past few days, it does show that rotation in the atmosphere. We've got outflow aloft, the upper level cirrus clouds spinning out off to the north and east of the center, and we've got some inflow coming in off of Venezuela. But again, its location so close to the South American coastline there, that is certainly doing something to stop it from developing, despite it being over some very warm ocean waters at the current time. Relative vorticity, I think this really tells the overall picture of what's going on here. The spin in the atmosphere is not consolidated. It is not circular in nature. It is spread out along that northern coast of South America, Venezuela, and this is a change from yesterday when it was starting to show itself getting a little more consolidated and circular. Not the case, at least at this time. Once it clears the ABC Islands and heads a little bit farther to the west of northern Colombia here, it'll be away from any land interaction. It'll still be in a conducive environment, so we expect that to consolidate and strengthen and organize as it does so. Let's take one more look at this here on water vapor imagery. This depicts the moist air and the dry air. Moist air being within the tropical system, certainly have plenty of that. Dry air sometimes will get pulled into the overall circulation. We can pinpoint where that is by the copper rust color. That's dry Saharan air. For this time of the year, climatologically favored, that's Saharan dust. And none of that's getting pulled into the center here. So it is void of the dry air, not much in the way of wind shear, has warm sea surface temperatures. The only things holding it back is that rapid movement and the kind of a proximity to land right now, even though the center of it is not currently interacting with land or moving over land. I talked about how hurricane hunters have been in and out of this system. They've been staging out of St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So this most recent mission is from the National Hurricane Center's U.S. Air Force recon planes. And we've got NOAA aircraft flying out of St. Croix as well as Barbados. In fact, they're repositioning to the U.S. Virgin Islands. But they most recently clocked a wind speed there even higher than what we've seen so far in the lifetime of the storm, at 52 miles per hour. So winds are getting stronger, but again, they're spread out a little bit more and they're not consolidated near a center. You can see those tropical storm warnings there, northern Colombia, northern Venezuela, ABC Islands. The track going forward here, this is coming off the 1 o'clock advisory. It was not changed from the 10 a.m. advisory. 10 a.m. was a slight tweak to it. But here we are going forward. I want you to draw your attention to a few things here. We're up to 45 mile per hour winds as early as this evening, so that's a modest strengthening. Once it clears northern Colombia and is out over the southern Caribbean with no land impediments for a while, we'll see it strengthen up to 50 miles per hour. At this point, it should be Bonnie, if not earlier than that. Takes advantage of the warm ocean waters, modest strengthening still, 60 miles per hour by Friday morning, and then heading towards the southern coast of Nicaragua, potentially the northern coast of Costa Rica by Friday evening as a high-end tropical storm. That's a change from what we've been talking about the last couple of days. This has been adjusted for intensity decreases. It was forecast to become the first Category 1 hurricane of the season. That is no longer the case. Could it overachieve if the overall conditions are right? Absolutely, and it wouldn't be the first time we've seen that. But right now, forecast to be a high-end tropical storm with 70 mile per hour winds at landfall. Then after it moves over Central America, this is the interesting part. It is forecast to maintain its overall circulation and then reemerge into the Eastern Pacific. That's a different basin. And then re-strengthen back up to a tropical storm. Now, if this scenario plays out and its overall circulation is maintained, it will actually keep its name. At that point, it will be Bonnie as it heads into a different basin. Now, it gets a new name, say if the surface circulation dissipates as it crosses over and it has the interaction with land, it'll get a brand new name. But if it holds on to that, it keeps Bonnie as it heads into the Eastern Pacific. And that's only happened a handful of times. That next name on the list is Bonnie. Up next is Colin, and then Danielle. Bonnie names have been used quite often. In fact, of a list that's rotated every 6 years, we've had 7 occurrences of Bonnie getting a name. Tropical storm in the most recent times, and then it was as high as a Category 3 major hurricane back in 1998. And of those 7 occurrences, 5 of those times it impacted or made landfall in the United States. That will not be the case this time around, as it's forecast to stay well away from any U.S. interests. All right, off to the south here. Here's that forecast track for the GFS ensemble. Still a good consensus, very bundled in all those ensemble members heading due west due to a big ridge, sprawling ridge of high pressure propelling it westwards. The Euro ensemble pretty much right on board with that as well. So overall, this has been a very easy forecast track for this storm, with the main dominant steering mechanism being that area of high pressure to the north, pushing it off to the west. And then you can see there's a little bit more of a dispersion of those model members as we get farther out in time and it enters the eastern Pacific basin. Here's how it looks as we compare the two models, the GFS and the European. Yellow GFS, red is European. Here we are by tomorrow evening. Still a broad area of circulation. It starts to consolidate and tighten up a bit. These are the isobars. When they get tighter together, those are lines of equal pressure. Pressure gradient's higher, stronger storm. GFS has a little bit of a stronger storm. Euro as well back on board. Right along the border of Costa Rica and Nicaragua at this point before landfall early Saturday morning. And then it reemerges in the eastern Pacific, and both models have it intensifying as conditions in that part of the basin are also pretty favorable. And there's the GFS and Euro. Potentially, what would be Bonnie in the eastern Pacific might become a hurricane at that point in time. So wind shear has never been a problem for the system with its such low latitude and the overall wind shear environment in the Atlantic being quite low. And I don't expect it to be impeding its development as it goes forward from here. It's just that fast speed, and once it slows down from 24 miles per hour, we'll likely see it consolidate a little bit and everything to kind of catch up with it. Sea surface temperatures also not a problem. Very warm, suitable for tropical development north of 80 degrees Fahrenheit. We're in the mid to upper 80s. Now, even though it's going to be a minimal grade for at least a little while tropical storm and maybe a higher grade tropical storm as it heads towards Nicaragua, notice the rainfall totals really kick up just ahead of landfall there. Areas could get up to 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of rain in a short amount of time, so that's also going to lead to some flooding, landslide issues. Wind, notice the wind field does get larger as the storm strengthens, as it heads farther out into the western portions of the Caribbean before heading into landfall. Only chances of tropical storm force winds at around 50%, and that's kind of a narrow area there, and then it heads out into the Pacific and starts to re-strengthen again. All right, let's go to the Gulf of Mexico now. This is Invest 95L. This is moving now to the west at 8 miles per hour, so a slow mover. Speed not an issue with this. With this storm, it's actually some wind shear. It's right now progged at 40% chance of developing and acquiring tropical characteristics. When you look at it on visible satellite imagery, you can pinpoint a couple things. You can see wind shear coming in from the southwest that's displacing a lot of the convection. You see kind of the cloudy, milky mess here off to the east side of the center, which we depict to be right around here. That's wind shear aloft displacing that thunderstorm activity. And look at the center here. It almost looks like a chimney. You're looking at a chimney from the sky. It's bubbling on up, and then that convection is getting blown to the side with winds coming aloft out of the southwest there. So that is stopping this from wrapping that convection all the way around the center and taking advantage of extremely warm sea surface temperatures, mid to upper 80s there right now. There have even been some readings at around 90. So plenty of fuel available for here, and that window is very, very small for it to develop because it's heading west, and eventually as it gets farther west, it's going to encounter land. It's away from this fuel source, the warm ocean water, so it moves over land and then starts to take a northwesterly turn and then a northerly turn, likely passing just to the west of Houston, meaning those areas will be on the wet, or what we call the dirty side of tropical systems, meaning that swath of deep tropical moisture moving inland along the area to the east of the forecast track. We could see some totals here, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 inches locally with some tropical downpours coming on through. All right, until next time, if you have any questions, you can find me on all the social media platforms. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and just joined TikTok. You can find me on all those. We'll see you again tomorrow.